Good morning, guys. My name is Carlene and I'm a psychic medium. I've been doing this work for quite a while, but full-time since 2012. And yeah, just check out my website. You'll see tons of testimonials, everything I do. And I'm excited to work with you in case you wanted to book a session with me. Now, I'm doing this video because I woke up this morning and I felt absolutely inspired to speak on this topic, on the topic of organic portals, or soulless ones, soulless beings. And it's quite a topic. It's something that sets people on edge. It makes people uneasy. It, in some cases, causes a cognitive dissonance because we're growing up in a society which teaches us that everyone has a soul. And they also teach us that a soul is kind of like a blueprint of ourselves on the astral level or something like that. That is not what I believe. I discussed this more in the video that I did on life after death, which I'll link to right up here, and you can check that out. But to me, a soul is a connection to the divine along which spirit travels, similar to a relationship that I have with you, for example, right? So we have a connection, a relationship, and along this relationship, along this connection, information can flow, feelings can flow, love can flow, right? Same with the soul. And our soul is, of course, unique to us, but I also believe that it is radiated out by the divine. So your soul can be destroyed, or this connection can be destroyed. It can be frozen in places, right? Made inflexible, and the spirit cannot pass through. It blocks the spirit of God in that case, but or source, or whatever you want to call it. But you can also, through reorientation to the divine will melt this and will reconnect to you, will reach out to you and fill you again with a soul and a spirit. So it's not all hope is lost in this case, but some beings that have been created by lower energy entity forces do not have this divine connection. They don't have the soul. They're similar to clone beings, they're similar to organic robots, but as an additional function of being a space filler in this case, in some cases, they're also portals, and they're called organic portals because another consciousness, and usually what kind of consciousness would do this, right? Step outside of their boundaries in a negative way. Usually the entities that do this, that abuse this kind of vehicle, are negative, right? So they can seat themselves in this vehicle and they can puppeteer the being or the body or this organic portal, this soulless one, because they don't have that protection, that already filled in connection to the divine, right? They are empty. So I used to think that narcissism and organic portals, soulless ones, were the same because they do share similar traits, and I do believe that narcissism is a spiritual disease which is afflicting humanity at this time. And I feel that it's being spread by culture, but that's a whole other video. I digress. But this organic soulless ones, they're usually found along your way. You stumble across them usually when you're going through the steps or the processes of awakening, of opening up to the divine, opening up to your true spirit, allowing your true spirit to flow down and flow through you. And this changes, of course, your environment. It changes, you change other people and situations by virtue of the energy that you bring to the space, right? So once spirits notice that you're awakening and that your energy is shifting and you're actually changing things, all of a sudden the matrix starts throwing things at you to stop you in your tracks, to divert you, to bring you down, to nail you back into place. And usually you'll find these organic beings, soulless ones, in your family circle, in your circle of friends, in your relationships, right? These are people that sow doubt. That's their main thing. They're not really overly aggressive. They can be very passive aggressive, but what they do mainly is they sow doubt in you. And doubt is very effective in reprogramming your divine self. It's really effective in hijacking and diverting a belief that you have in the cosmos, in God, and really successful in draining your soul and really successful in diverting you from believing in your own, what comes up in you and what arises in you as your own intuitive insight. So they come in with a lot of doubt and a lot of fear, and it's almost like they get this perverse kind of satisfaction when they can divert you from your track, when they can prove you wrong in some cases, or seem to prove you wrong, right? Their reprogramming efforts are usually in a time when you're weak, when you're feeling down, when you're looking for support, when you're opening yourself up. They will step in, and instead of showing you empathy, this is another key thing that you can recognize them by. Instead of showing you empathy, they show you a doubt, and they increase your doubt in yourself. They increase your doubt in the divine. They increase your doubt in life itself. And so they'll mask. They're magnificent at masking themselves. They're amazing at masters of disguise. And what they do is they like to emulate, they like to copy others. So you'll see that these are not really creative people, because they don't have this connection to the source of creativity, which is, of course, not us, but the divine that flows through us, inspires us, and allows us to be creative. So they don't have this connection to the divine. So what they will do is they will copy. So they can be expert copycats. They can really copy to almost a perfection, but what you'll realize in their copied work is that something is missing. So some people, they can, those bands that redo songs, right? And they redo the song in their own way. They add their little pizzazz to it. Now, this is still creative, it's still human, but then there are others that pay exactly what the original band played, beat for beat, note for note, down to the exact timing, right? Absolutely exact, and it's very mechanical, it's very robotic, and there's something missing from it, that spark of creativity, that spark of life, that spark of the divine. Because the one thing that really marks the divine, marks life, is a marker for creativity, is change, is flow. Because when something's moving, it's always changing, right? As I move my arm, I'm always changing something. And this is a sign of life, is that something is constantly changing, and it's never quite the same, right? So life will express this change through various modes of expression, various modes of people, snowflakes, plants, colors, you name it. And this vibrancy, this change, is a sign of life. But the organic portal will resist change. They'll resist change within themselves, in others, and in their lives, and in their so-called creativity, or what they do. They will consistently try to make everything the exact same, 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 the exact same. A lot of times people will also notice that these organic portals have kind of dead eyes. They have also got this stare, so they can stare unblinkingly for an odd amount of time at people, and through that also disconcert people, or bring them out of their flow, out of their rhythm, and then insert their program, their rhythm into the whole scenario. They are, you can also tell the varying pupils, right? So with dark eyes, it's also, you can tell with dark eyes too. Of course, it's more difficult, right? So I have round pupils. I do. Can you see it? I think that if I get the light to shine through this eye. But you can tell with the varying pupil dilation. Some people, they literally sometimes, they have these slits for pupils, and what it reminds me of is the 1 and the 0 of computer language. Okay, so some people will have that 1, and other people will have that 0, and it's like this blank, dead stare. But also, when they have this slit, you know that they're being hijacked. You know that there's a different consciousness that's speaking through them to you, and it's only a matter of time if you start playing with it, right, until it reveals itself and it shows itself for what it really is. A lot of times these organic portals, or soulless ones, they're interested in spiritual topics, and they will They will, like predators, they're roaming these groups. They target especially spiritual people for relationships, for friendships, to adorn themselves with as well, right? So they love to tarn themselves with strange feathers, with others' feathers, right? With others' accomplishments, and align themselves to it, because this is a source of sustenance for them. These people are where they drain their energy off of, right? And you'll notice that some people that are dealing with these organic portals, soulless ones, they lose their spark over time. They feel their energy just being drained. They're less creative, they're less open. They can feel their solar plexus closing off because they're being slammed and bombarded subconsciously with doubt, with fear, with negation, with disbelief. They can feel their creative sacral chakra closing off as well. And with these two closed, the others fall into imbalance as well. And soon your entire system is in imbalance. And you can be, for a while, you can be shut down or turned off. And that's exactly what they've been sent to do. So, of course, you can see it in a different way, in a different light, that they are being sent to test the spirit, the entity, you in this case. But sometimes it is just what it is, right? We live in this vast sea of consciousness with many different beings that have many different ulterior motives and agendas that are swimming through. Ultimately, we can't always know 100% for sure what their purpose is in being here, but we can say safely that they are here. Now, for some of you, this may sound outrageous and outlandish because you've grown up in this mindset, right? This religious mindset that every created being comes from God, and that everyone has a soul or a connection to God as a result of this. But it's unfortunately, in my experience, that's not quite true. In my experience is the creative principle comes from God, but what the various beings do that have that ability to create is up to them in this free will universe experiment. And unfortunately, there are, or fortunately, it depends on, you know, how you see it, there are beings that are using this energy negatively out of their free will decision. Now, you can, some people say that you can also send messages to the matrix through the organic portals. So once you realize them for who they are, it's almost like you can play with them, right? You can use their own tricks and machinations against them and send messages back to the matrix, or those that sent them into your life in the first place. And I'm sure it can be done. I've never tried it. If you have, please let me know how that worked out, because I'd love to know. And but some people say it works quite well. What else about organic portals? They are great vessels for the matrix to insert into our lives in order to, as we spoke about, deflect and divert, right? And they cannot be, you'll be trying to, these are the people where you lose a lot of energy and time trying to change them. That's right. You lose a lot of energy and time because you are, and with that, the distraction is complete. These are the people that are closest to you in a sense of, you know, you really want them to get what you're about. You really want to understand what you're saying. You want them to realize the truth of the situation. You want them to wake up. You don't want to leave them behind. And effectively, you end up running down their path of development, distancing yourself further and further and further from your own path. And eventually you wake up in a world not of your own making, but theirs. And they love to flip, right? So you'll get to know them, and they're very kind and giving and sharing and caring. And all of a sudden, along the way, it just suddenly flips. And you're busy, similar as with a narcissist, trying to live up to their expectations, which of course you never will. And so they start slowly reprogramming you, and eventually you are a Borg too. Now, these beings understand the laws of consciousness and the rules of consciousness more better than we do, and they're different beings at different levels of beings, and in the positive as well as in the negative. So even though we're talking about the negative here, don't think that the positive isn't there as well. The positive is here on this planet too. There are positive energies, positive beings, beings of light that are working with us, working with all of us, working with groups, working with energies that are here to help us expand and help us grow and become the bridge of consciousness that we are meant to be, right? So they're helping us develop even more into that. So don't be afraid by listening to this. But if this is not along, what you believe in, then don't listen, right? Don't. If this is not for you, then don't worry about it. Just keep on your merry way and do what you came here to do, and don't let yourself be distracted. But some people need to hear this because they're dealing with something that they don't understand, right? So these beings are, when you think of quantum physics or quantum, here we go. When you think of that, you'll realize a little bit better how it works. So they, the CERN experiment in their Hadron Collider, they split up an electron and they sent. Don't ask me how they did it. I'll post a link below where you can read about this. But they sent part of an electron to another collider in Japan, and they had part of a electron in France. And what happened was, when they triggered this electron, when they played around with it, the one in France, the one in Japan reacted immediately, regardless of time and space. It reacted immediately. And they then realized that at the fundamental basics of our reality, all the way at the bottom, we work outside of time and space, right? So time and space is in this sense not real. And so these beings understand that. And the problem is that what a lot of New Agers do nowadays, and people have been warning about this since time immemorial, but the fascination with the world beyond and to dive into it without proper training or proper fortification or proper any of that is too great, because they still trigger that little spiritual ego that we all have, right? And people are sometimes not willing to harness it, not willing to do what it takes to really develop a potent skill, a really strong skill, because deep within themselves they're probably still doubting the reality of this, and so they prefer to just play around with it rather than really develop it into something really magnificent. So they hook into that. They hook into that little sense of doubt. They hook into that little sense of fear. They hook into that little sense of spiritual ego that people have, and they exploit it. So people are oh my gosh, I'm getting bit. Sorry. So people have to realize how these beings work. The minute that you open up to something that is of their nature, they bond in these, they just need a little bit. That's it. Just like with these electrons, right? And what they do is they slowly start influencing you, right? If you don't realize fully who you are, right, you will accept these implants that they put into your consciousness as part of you, as your own recognition. And first they start off slowly, small. And as you recognize more and more as yourself, right, and incorporate this, integrate this. So we have to be really careful with integration sometimes, right? Integrate this into yourself. They can then start to puppeteer you, even though they're not even in your vicinity. They're not even close to you, right? Because everything works outside of time and space. Now, Some people are used completely, right? When they've gotten to the body to a certain point, or the person to a certain point, that they are steadily in a certain vibrational energy and vibrational field, they can then come in and infiltrate that person and work through that person in this reality. They can then seat themselves in this vehicle and comfortably drive. And some do, some don't, because they prefer to be on the other side where they're unrestrained, but just influence over here. Now, of course, this is all really scary, and people are like, well, what can we do? And but we are powerful beings in our own right, and we have dominion over the consciousness that we've been given to transmute. And if we elevate ourselves, and if we recognize within ourselves, if we realize ourselves, right, these beings have no chance to reside or to stay within us. They only have a chance with an unrealized being, with someone who isn't willing to do the work, who isn't willing to go into those dark corners, who isn't willing to heal the wounding, the trauma, the pain, the grief, the anguish, who isn't willing to look at their spiritual ego, who isn't willing to do all of that work. They are able to dive in and expand a little bit. Now, another thing is constant triggers, right? So if you're living with someone who's constantly triggering you, who's constantly pounding at you, and this is why child abuse, right? If you're living with someone who's constantly triggering your disgust filter, this will weaken your aura, it will weaken your shields, because you're investing so much energy into maintaining those shields that other vital parts of your being are driven down to a bare minimum, which affects other parts of your life, which then requires more energy into it, which means it has to draw that energy out of you, strengthening your shields into these other areas of your life, which leaves your shields a little bit open for you get weaker. And so if you're constantly with someone, then you need to really do the work and look at, is this something about me that I need to change? Where is this coming from? Or is it this person? Because if it's that person, if it's really that person may be suffering under attachments, may have entities, may be an organic portal, but whatever it is, their energy is there to weaken you, to bring you down, to distract you. You'll also find that these people love to get into competition with you. They love to get into competition with you. When you speak, they say the same thing and negate you at the same time. So they'll negate you and say, no, it's not like that. And then they'll repeat exactly what you said in a different kind of context. And so one-up you. They love to one-up. They think everything is a competition. And you'll find this in your relationships as well, that all of a sudden your partner with whom you're supposed to be working with is in competition with you. Your sister, your brother, your parents, your family, your friends, your colleagues, they're always in competition with you instead of like working with you or allowing you to work with them. And so this is part of this consciousness that they're coming from, right? They're in competition with each other as well over energy resources, because they're coming out of this this space where they have very limited resources, which is why they're so predatory, right? Because they've already ruined their resources, their original resources, and now they have to spread out and forage for more. And so they're constantly on the hunt, they're constantly on the look, they're constantly hungry, because their original way of nourishing themselves just wasn't working anymore. Now, what I've been given, what I've been told, and what I'm being told by Spirit as I speak right now too, is that these beings are a diversion, or have diverted on the spiritual development pathway. They have chosen a different path of development. Instead of developing, they stood in front of the exact same questions and experiences that we had, that we're facing right now, and instead of developing more into love, unity, community, they decided to dive deeper into separation and chaos. So as I spoke about in my life after death video, these forces of chaos cannot maintain consistently for a long period of time, because by their very nature they are divisive, they are breaking down. So what they do is they end up breaking down their own host, they end up breaking down their own environment to live and to thrive in, which is a reflection kind of what we're doing right now, and they destroy the very thing that they need to survive. So it's not something that can be maintained for a long period of time. And you can shake this off. You can shake this off. They're not very strong beings. They're not strong outside of their bodies. They're not strong alone or of themselves. They need a host. They need someone to feed off of. They need someone there to give them energy, because otherwise they have no energy. They have no access to energy of their own, because they're not open, because they're not with in the divine flow, receiving divine energy, receiving from source. That's why we call source. It's the source of all things, of all energy, being, life, love, you name it. They don't have access to it, so they need people around them. So once they realize that they're, but what they will do is definitely try to manipulate you to make you feel like they are the prize, like you need them. And they're quite good at that, in order to make it easier on them to maintain a connection with you, because they know you're going to stick around and hang out and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, right? So these beings are also they could be used as a force for good, right? If their consciousness wasn't so trapped in fear, if it wasn't coming from a fearful place, they could be used as a force for good and good influencing, good reprogramming, but they're not. And they're not interested in being reprogrammed. They're not interested in changing. They're not interested in opening up to spirit. They're not interested in finding a different way to exist. And as you know, you cannot force someone else to change. So the advice by the teachers, like as I post in the description below, is to stay away from these beings, to run far, because they will shut you down. They will infect you. They will try to get you to stop your development and your growth. And they will try to overtake you, to use you for their own ends and purposes. And for some people, it takes a long time to shake these beings. It takes a long time to shake their influence. It takes a long time to shake the focus that they have on you. And if you are not able to maintain some kind of a spiritual practice which maintains your spiritual connection to source, if you haven't transcended your various issues, then you are a target, and you really need to take care of yourself, right? So now the tricky part is, how do we judge who is a soulless being and who isn't, right? And that's a difficult thing to do, because as it says in scriptures, for example, nobody knows the heart of man except for God himself. So you may make mistakes as you look through your own faulty lenses and filters. You may make mistakes. So all you can go by is consistency, right? So does this person consistently make me feel bad? Does this person consistently, when I observe my energy and their energy and how it works together, am I consistently being shut down? Am I consistently being edged out? Am I consistently being not seen, not heard, not respected, right? Which goes back to basic principles, actually, of human interaction. And this goes for organic portals or narcissists or anything else we may encounter, is how do I feel, right? And what I want to leave you guys with is, nature teaches you so much. And if you just look out around yourself, you'll see how to respond and how to react. And if you watch animals in the wild, if they're in a place that is harmful to them, is close to predators that are hungry and on the prowl and on the look, if they are in a place that has nothing to eat for them, guess what? They move on. They're not going to try and stay and make it work, right? They move on. And the same advice is being given to you by life is, you know, some things you just got to accept and just take it for what it is and move on. Get out of there. Get into a place within yourself and without, where you're surrounded by harmony, beauty, love, life, joy, caring, sharing, openness, and leave the rest to find itself, and find itself it will. Okay? Take care. Have a good day. I'm excited to read your comments on this. Bye.